I learned to trust my gut after 67 years of living. That instinct is a quiet thing, usually a hum in the back of your mind when you take a wrong turn or meet a stranger who smiles too widely. But that afternoon, sitting in my kitchen with the late afternoon sun cutting through the blinds, my gut wasn't humming. It was screaming. It started with the coffee. My son Brian was pouring us both a cup. He was 42 years old, a man who had always moved with a kind of frenetic, confident energy. But as he lifted the carafe, his hand shook. Just a tremor. A tiny, almost imperceptible vibration that caused the dark liquid to slosh dangerously close to the rim of my world's best grandpa mug. Brian never had shaky hands. He was the kid who could build a house of cards 5 stories high. He was the teenager who could sink a free throw with 2 seconds on the clock and the entire gym screaming, "Dad, I've got an incredible opportunity for you," he said, setting the cup in front of me with too much care, like he was handling unexploded ordnance. He sat down across from me, his blue eyes bright, too bright, manic. "Remember how you always said you wished you'd gotten in on commercial real estate earlier?" I did remember. I'd said it once, maybe twice, 20 years ago when my wife, Claire, was still alive. We had driven past a massive shopping center, going up near our house, watching the steel skeletons rise against the Arizona sky. I had sighed and said, "Imagine if we'd bought that land 10 years ago." But Brian remembered. He always remembered the things that mattered to him, the things he could use. "I'm listening," I said, leaning back in my chair. But something in his voice, that rehearsed cheerfulness, that salesman's pitch, reminded me of the calls I used to get when I worked at Morgan Stanley. The cold calls. The ones where someone had already decided to lie before they even picked up the phone. He pulled out a folder. It was thick, glossy, and meticulously organized. Too organized for Brian. My son was smart, brilliant even, but he was chaotic. The Brian I knew kept his tax documents in a Nike shoebox and forgot his own daughter's ballet recital last month. This folder looked like it had been prepared by a team of lawyers. "There's a mixed-use development going up in Tempe," he began, opening the folder and sliding it toward me. "Ground floor retail, residential luxury apartments above. The location is prime, right near the university, but upscale enough for young professionals." He tapped a page filled with charts and graphs. "The developer needs private investors to close the initial funding round. I've already secured 3 units. Projected returns are 18 to 22% annually. Dad, I've got 1 unit left, and I thought of you first." 18 to 22%? In this market? My internal alarm bells went from a scream to a siren. "Who's the developer?" I asked, keeping my voice neutral. "Silver Point Development Group," Brian answered instantly. "They did that luxury complex near Scottsdale Fashion Square. Impeccable reputation. Top-tier work." I nodded slowly, watching his left knee bounce under the table. Bounce, 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 Brian's tell. He'd had it since he was 8 years old. Every time he tried to convince his mother he hadn't eaten the cookies before dinner, that knee would dance. "The thing is, Dad, they need a commitment this week," he continued, his speech accelerating. "The closing window is tight because of permit deadlines. I know it's fast, but this is the kind of opportunity that doesn't come around twice. I've already put in $200,000 of my own money." I froze. 200,000? Brian, who had called me 6 months ago asking to borrow $1,500 because he was a little short on his mortgage payment. Brian, whose wife Melissa had confided in me at Thanksgiving that they were cutting back on groceries. 200,000, I repeated. "That's a significant investment, Brian." It is, he said, nodding vigorously. But you have to spend money to make money, right? That's what you always taught me. I looked at him, really looked at him. There were dark circles under his eyes that the manic energy couldn't hide. His shirt collar was slightly frayed. He looked like a man running a race he was already losing. Let me think about it, I said. His face fell. Just for a split second, the mask slipped, revealing a terrifying, raw desperation. Then the smile snapped back into place. Of course. Due diligence. But Dad, seriously, don't think too long. These units are going fast. I'd hate for you to miss out. He stood up, gathering his keys. I'll leave the folder with you. Call me tonight? I'll call you, I promised. After he left, I sat at that kitchen table for an hour. The house was quiet, the silence heavy with the ghosts of better days. I looked at the papers. Everything looked legitimate. The Silver Point logo was sleek and modern. The legal language was dense. There were architectural renderings of a gleaming building with people drinking lattes on balconies. But Brian's hands had shaken, and his knee had bounced. I picked up the phone and called Jennifer, my daughter, the pediatrician, the one who had somehow inherited her mother's ability to see through Brian's smoke and mirrors. Dad? She answered on the second ring. Is everything okay? Brian was just here, I said. He pitched me an investment, Silver Point Development Group. Did he ask for money? Her voice went tight instantly. He's offering me an opportunity. He claims he invested $200,000 of his own money. Silence on the other end. A long, heavy pause. Dad, she whispered, when is the last time Brian had $200,000? That's what I thought. Please tell me you didn't give him anything. I'm not an idiot, Jenny. I know you're not, she said, her voice softening. But he's your son, and you want to believe him. We all want to believe him. He looked desperate, Jenny. He said he put his own money in. Dad, Melissa called me yesterday, Jennifer said. They're 3 months behind on the mortgage. They got a final notice. Brian drained their emergency fund for some venture 6 months ago that went nowhere. He doesn't have $200,000. He doesn't have $2,000. My heart sank. I'll look into it, I said. Carefully. Please, Dad, be careful. The next morning, I went into detective mode. I didn't want to be a detective. I wanted to be a retired father enjoying his coffee and the crossword puzzle. But life rarely gives you what you want. I called Richard Chen. Richard and I had worked side by side at Morgan Stanley for 20 years. He had retired the same year I did, but kept his fingers in the local real estate pie as a consultant. If anyone knew about a major development in Tempe, it was Richard. Silver Point Development Group, Richard repeated slowly over the phone. I could hear the clicking of his keyboard in the background. Tom, give me a minute. I waited. The seconds ticked by like hours. Tom, Richard said, his voice changing tone. It was the voice he used when we had to tell a client their portfolio had crashed. There's no such company. My stomach turned cold. Are you sure? I've run it through the Arizona Corporation Commission database. I've checked the registrar of contractors. I've even looked at the city planning permits for Tempe for the last 12 months. No permits filed for a mixed-use development matching that description. No company registered under that name in Arizona, Nevada, or California. He paused. There is a Silver Point LLC registered in Delaware, but it's a holding company for a dry cleaner in Newark. I don't think that's your guy. No, I whispered. It's not. Tom, where did you hear about this? Brian. The silence stretched between us, heavy with understanding. Richard knew Brian. He had been at Brian's wedding. He had given Brian his first internship, which ended poorly. I'm sorry, Tom, Richard said softly. Yeah, I said. Me too. I hung up the phone and stared at the glossy brochure on my table. It looked so real. The logo, the font, the projections. It was a beautiful, meticulously crafted lie. I got in my car and drove. I drove to the address listed on the brochure, 1402 West Mill Avenue, Tempe. I knew the area. It was near the old flour mill, a part of town that was indeed gentrifying. When I arrived, I pulled my car to the curb and turned off the engine. There was no construction site, no cranes, no workers in hard hats, no foundation being poured. It was a vacant lot, just dirt, weeds, and a chain-link fence with a faded "For Lease" sign that looked like it had been baking in the Arizona sun for 5 years. A tumbleweed was actually stuck against the fence. I got out of the car and stood in the heat. Sweat soaked through my shirt instantly. I stared at the empty dirt. This was it. This was the opportunity. I thought about the last time I had truly looked at my son, really looked at him. It had been at Claire's funeral 3 years ago. He had stood at the back of the church, wearing sunglasses, even though we were indoors. He had left before the reception, mumbling something about a business meeting he couldn't miss. At the time, I had thought he was grieving in his own way. I thought he couldn't handle the condolences. Now, standing in front of this vacant lot, I wondered if he had even been grieving at all, or if he had been calculating. My phone rang. The screen flashed. Brian. I stared at it. For a moment, I wanted to throw the phone into the vacant lot and drive away. Drive until I was in Mexico. Drive until I wasn't a father anymore. But I answered. Brian. Dad. Hey! His voice was breathless. Have you had a chance to think about the investment? I've got 2 other people interested in that last unit. A dentist from Mesa and a guy from my golf club. But I'm holding them off because I really want you to have this. Pressure. Classic sales tactic. Create scarcity. Create urgency. I had used it myself back when I was younger and stupider. Brian, I said, my voice flat. I've got some questions about Silver Point development. His breathing changed on the other end. A tiny hitch. Sure, what do you want to know? I want to meet them, the developers, before I invest. Oh, he laughed nervously. Well, they're pretty busy with the construction phase, Dad. They're not really taking meetings with individual investors. That's my job. I want to meet them this week, or I'm not interested. Dad, I don't think you understand how private equity works. You're investing through me. I'm the syndicate lead. Brian, I cut him off. I was a financial advisor for 42 years. I understand exactly how it works. I took a deep breath. I'm standing in the vacant lot right now, Brian. The address from your brochure. 1402 West Mill Avenue. Silence. There's nothing here, Brian. Just dirt and weeds. The silence that followed was the loudest thing I had ever heard. I could hear the traffic passing by on the street. I could hear my own heart hammering. I can explain, he finally said. His voice had lost the salesman's polish. It sounded thin, scared. I'm sure you can. The address on the brochure is old. They moved the project location last week because of zoning issues. That's why... Stop, I said. Just stop. Dad, you have to understand. I'm in a really bad position right now. The business is struggling, and Melissa is talking about leaving, and I just needed you to steal from your father. I wasn't stealing, he shouted. I was going to pay you back, I swear. There's this other opportunity, a real one, flipping houses in Gilbert, and if I could just get some capital together to buy into that. So Silver Point is fake, I said. You made it up. It was a placeholder, a bridge loan. I just needed the cash for 6 months, Dad. I would have paid you back with interest. I wouldn't have hurt you. You tried to commit fraud against me, Brian. You forged documents. You lied to my face. I'm drowning, he sobbed. I'm actually drowning, and you're the only one who can help me. I hung up. My hands were shaking now. Not like Brian's careful tremors, but violent, spasmodic shakes. I sat down on the curb of that empty lot, right there in the dirt, because my legs wouldn't hold me anymore. This was the boy I'd taught to ride a bike. This was the teenager I'd stayed up with all night when Claire was in the hospital having emergency surgery. This was the young man I'd co-signed student loans for, and he was a con artist. I didn't go straight home. I drove to a park and sat there for 2 hours, watching kids play on the swings. I watched fathers pushing their sons, laughing, unaware of the future, unaware that one day that laughing boy might try to rob them. When I finally got home, I did something I had been avoiding for 3 years. I went into Claire's office. I had kept the room exactly as she had left it the morning of the car accident. Her reading glasses were still on the desk. Her calendar was still turned to that terrible month 3 years ago. I sat in her chair. It still smelled faintly of her lavender perfume. I turned on her computer. It hummed to life, the screen glowing blue in the dim room. It was password protected, but I knew the password. I had always known it. Our wedding anniversary, backwards. I opened her email. I didn't know what I was looking for, exactly. Maybe solace. Maybe a sign. I found a folder labeled simply, Brian. My stomach dropped. I clicked it. There were hundreds of emails, going back 5 years. Claire reaching out to financial counselors, printouts of Brian's business debts she had scanned, emails between her and a lawyer about how to protect our retirement assets. She had known he was heading down this path years ago. I opened an email chain titled Concern Regarding B. It was to her sister, who had passed away a year before Claire. He's lying to us, Sarah. He says the business is booming, but I saw the notice from the bank in his truck. Tom won't listen. He thinks I'm being too hard on him. He thinks Brian just has bad luck. But I've seen the signs, the lying, the borrowing, the schemes. Each one is bigger than the last. I read another one. I'm scared that one day he's going to really hurt someone, and Tom's love will blind him to it until it's too late. I need to talk to Tom this weekend. Really talk to him. Make him see what I see. I can't be the bad guy anymore. The date on that email was 2 days before she died. She never got that weekend. She never got to have that talk. I sat in her chair and wept. I cried for Claire. I cried for the years I had wasted defending Brian, dismissing her concerns as a mother being overprotective. I cried for the guilt of knowing she had carried this burden alone because I was too stubborn to see the truth. My phone buzzed on the desk. A text from Brian. Dad, please let me explain in person. I'm coming over. I wiped my face. The sadness was hardening into something else, something cold and heavy, like iron. I texted back, don't. 20 minutes later, his car pulled into my driveway. I met him at the door. I stepped out onto the porch and pulled the door shut behind me. I didn't let him in. Dad, he said. He looked terrible. His eyes were red, his shirt wrinkled. He looked like a man who hadn't slept in a week. Please, just hear me out. I'm listening, I said. I got in over my head, he started, pacing back and forth on the porch, with some bad investments. Real ones, I swear. And then there were medical bills when Chloe broke her arm, and the business is seasonal, and Melissa's been on me about the mortgage. He stopped and looked at me, hands held out in supplication. I panicked. I thought if I could get some quick capital, I could turn everything around, pay everyone back, make it right. By creating a fake company and lying to your father? I was going to pay you back, I swear. With what money, Brian? The money from the house flipping scheme in Gilbert? The one that doesn't exist yet? It will exist. I have a buddy. Brian, I said, my voice low. Do you hear yourself? You are standing here, after trying to defraud me of $200,000, and you are trying to pitch me another scheme." He flinched. "I gave you $50,000 for your restaurant," I listed, "$20,000 for your real estate license, $15,000 for your consulting business. How much money have I given you over the years, Brian? How much?" "That was helping," he shouted. "That was being a father." "That was enabling," I corrected. "And this, creating fake documents, that's criminal fraud." He went still. You wouldn't." "Your mother knew," I said. That stopped him cold. "What?" "She knew you were heading down this path. I just read her emails. She tried to warn me. She died trying to protect me from you." Brian's face twisted. "Don't bring Mom into this. She loved me." "She did love you. That's why she was so scared, because she saw what I couldn't, that her son was turning into a predator." Brian stared at me. The desperation in his eyes shifted into something ugly. Entitlement, rage. "You're just like her," he spat. "Always judging, always assuming the worst. You sit on that pile of money, safe and retired, and you judge me for trying to survive. I'm trying to build an empire, and all you do is tear me down." "Get off my property," I said quietly. "Dad, get off my property, or I am calling the police right now." He stared at me for a long moment. Then he sneered. A look I had never seen on his face before. A stranger's look. "Fine," he said. "Keep your money. Rot with it." He turned and walked to his car. He peeled out of the driveway, gravel spraying across the lawn. I watched him go. And then I picked up the phone and called the police. Jennifer came over that evening. She brought Chinese takeout and a bottle of scotch. She found me sitting in the dark living room. "How are you holding up?" she asked, turning on a lamp. "I'm old," I said, "and tired." She sat next to me. I talked to Melissa. "How is she?" "She's leaving him. She's taking Chloe and moving back to her parents' place in Tucson." "My granddaughter, Chloe, 8 years old. She knows about the scam," Jennifer continued. "She knew before we did. He tried it on her parents first. They said no, so he moved on to you." A fresh wave of nausea hit me. He had gone down the list. He had targeted everyone who loved him. "She's done, Dad, and she wants to know. She wants to know if you'll testify if this goes to court. She's filing for full custody, and she needs documentation of his fraud attempts to prove he's unstable." Would I testify against my own son? 3 days ago, the answer would have been no. Absolutely not. Blood is thicker than water. But I kept thinking about Claire's email. I'm scared that one day he's going to really hurt someone. He had hurt Melissa. He had hurt Chloe. He had tried to hurt me. "Yeah," I said, my voice cracking. "I'll testify." The police report was filed the next morning. I provided the fake brochure, the emails, the photos of the vacant lot, and Richard's testimony about the non-existent company. The detective, a young woman named Martinez, looked at me with pity. "Mr. Morrison, I have to ask," she said gently. "Do you understand that if we pursue this, your son could face felony charges?" "I understand." "And you want to proceed?" I closed my eyes. I saw Brian as a boy, running to me with a scraped knee. I saw Brian as a man, lying to my face with shaking hands. "Yes," I said. "I want to proceed." Brian was arrested 3 weeks later. It wasn't just for my case. My report had triggered a wider investigation. It turned out I wasn't his only target. He had been running a Ponzi scheme, targeting elderly investors in Sun City. He had defrauded 4 other people out of nearly $500,000. I was just the final Hail Mary. The headline in the local paper read, "Local real estate agent arrested in elder fraud scheme." My phone rang off the hook. Friends, neighbors, people from church. Poor Brian. I can't believe it. Is there anything we can do? I stopped answering. 3 months later, I got a letter. Jail stationery. I left it on the counter for 2 days. Finally, at 2 Qadis a.m., I opened it. Dad, I don't expect you to forgive me. I don't expect you to understand. But I need you to know that I'm sorry. Not sorry I got caught. Sorry for what I did. Sorry for who I became. They've got me in therapy here, mandatory. The therapist keeps asking me when it started. When I decided that everyone else was just a resource to be used, I think it was the restaurant. That first failure. I was so ashamed. I couldn't face telling Mom I'd blown through the money. And you just gave me more. You told me it was okay. I learned that failure didn't matter because you'd always catch me. I learned I could take risks with other people's money because the consequences weren't mine. I kept waiting for you to stop me, for someone to tell me no, really no, the kind of no that has consequences, but it never came. So I kept going, and the lies got easier. Mom knew. I realize that now. She tried to stop me, and I played you against her. I'm sorry. The prosecutor offered a deal. 18 months if I cooperate. I'm going to take it. Not because it's easy, but because I need to stop running. I need to sit with what I've done. I love you, Dad, even though I have a terrible way of showing it. Brian, I read it 10 times. Then I put it in Claire's drawer. I didn't write back. Brian served his time. 18 months in a minimum security facility in Florence. I didn't visit. Jennifer did, occasionally. She told me he was different, quieter. He was working in the prison library. When he was released, he moved into a halfway house in Phoenix. He got a job in construction, pouring concrete. Hard, physical labor. No suits, no brochures, no schemes. A year after his release, he texted me, Dad, I know you don't want to hear from me, but I'm getting married. Small ceremony. Her name is Rachel. She's a teacher. I understand if you don't come, but I wanted you to know. Also, I've been paying Melissa child support, and I've saved $2,000 to pay you back. I can send it or save it until I have more. $2,000, a drop in the bucket. But it was real money, earned with sweat, not lies. I called Jennifer. Did you know? Yeah, Rachel is great, Dad. She met him at AA. He's been sober for 2 years. Sober? He was drinking a lot, Dad. Toward the end, to handle the stress of the lies. I see. He's trying, Dad. He really is. I didn't go to the wedding. I wasn't ready. But I sent a card, and a check for $2,000, returning his money. Put this toward your honeymoon, I wrote. Consider your debt partially forgiven. Partially. Because complete forgiveness felt like a lie. It felt like saying what he did didn't matter. And it did matter. Brian left me a voicemail the next day. He was crying. Thank you, Dad. Partially is enough. Partially is everything. Another year passed. Brian sent updates, photos of his stepdaughters, proof of his restitution payments. I started attending a support group for victims of elder fraud. It sounds depressing, but it wasn't. It was just a room full of people who had loved someone enough to be stupid. My son said he'd pay me back, I told them one night, and I believe he meant it, but meaning it doesn't make it true. We learned to live with the duality, loving the sinner, hating the sin, protecting ourselves while keeping our hearts open. Then came the text about the piano recital. Chloe is playing Chopin's Nocturne in E-flat major, the one Grandma Claire used to play. She asked if Grandpa Tom would come. Chloe. I couldn't punish Chloe for Brian's sins. I went. I sat in the back row. When Chloe walked on stage, she looked so much like Claire, it took my breath away. She sat at the piano, adjusted the bench, and began to play. The notes drifted through the auditorium. Nocturne in E-flat major. It was the song Claire played when she was stressed, or sad, or just needed to think. It was the soundtrack of our marriage. I cried in the back row. I cried for the music, for Claire, for the broken, messy, beautiful thing that is a family. When it was over, Chloe found me in the lobby. She hugged me tight. "Grandpa, you came. I wouldn't miss it for the world." Then she looked over my shoulder. "Maybe you and Dad can talk now." Brian was standing 20 feet away. He looked older, rougher, but steady. His hands were clasped in front of him, and they weren't shaking. We stood there while Jennifer took Chloe to get ice cream. "Thank you for coming," Brian said. "I came for Chloe." "I know. That's why I asked." We stood in silence. "I'm not ready yet," I said, "to go back to how things were." "I know," Brian said. "I don't expect you to be. I'm just trying to do the next right thing." "Keep doing it," I said. "Consistency, Brian. That's all I want. Consistency. I promise." We didn't hug. We didn't shake hands. We just nodded. Two men standing in the wreckage, deciding to start clearing the debris, one stone at a time. It wasn't a happy ending, but it was an honest one. And after everything, honest was the only thing that mattered.